Welcome to the Boss Podcast, the best of social selling. Your host, Mark McInnes, Australia's #1 social seller, brings you expert opinion, tactics, and discussion to help you get more out of your time on social.
Before we jump into this episode with James Michael, I need to say a big thank you to all of those who have embraced the podcast so far, whether that be providing us with a rating or sending us a message. We're very, very grateful for the support. Really appreciate the messages that we've received to date. And if you'd like to send us a message, we'd be glad to hear from you, particularly if you're interested in telling us what you'd like to hear more of or what you'd like to hear less of or what direction you think we should take the pod. We're very keen to make this as valuable for you as possible. And in that vein, I have a bit of a quick confession to make, and that is that one of the reasons I actually started this project was to simply learn more about social, about how people are using tools like LinkedIn. And this episode with James really delivered. It's been quite some time since I was in a situation where I was looking for a job, so my level of knowledge here is quite low. And I was genuinely surprised by James's suggestions as to what we should be doing if we're looking for a new job and we were going to be using LinkedIn to help support that search for a job. I'm sure you'll find this chat with James Michael as interesting as I did. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to the Boss Podcast, the podcast that helps you become better at using social for sales and lead generation. Today, we have what we call our expert series. This is where we bring in an expert to tell us all about a particular aspect of the social space. So, of course, we need an expert to help us do that. And today we have James Michael. How are you?
Mate, I'm good. Thank you for giving me that accolade. I thought you were introducing somebody else.
No, absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to having you on today and talking about our topic, which is, of course, you know, you've been stood down or laid off, sacked, as we say here in Australia. You've been sacked. How do you leverage social and digital to get back in the game? And my favourite questions, what should we be doing and what shouldn't we be doing?
Indeed.
But before we get to that, let's get the obvious question out of the way nice and early. James Michael, any relation to George Michael?
I often used to say to people, you know, when it's James Michael. Michael, is that your surname? Yeah, no, as in George Michael. But when he started hanging around men's loos in LA, I stopped doing that.
Right. Okay. So I thought if you shaved that beard a bit closer, you probably look very similar.
Thanks, mate. Thank you so much.
So maybe a little bit more of a serious introduction. What's one cool thing that people won't know about you if they go to your social profiles? Tell us something that's cool about James.
Ooh, one cool thing about me. Oh, in a lifetime, long time ago, I used to wear a green beret to work every day.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that wasn't selling French baguettes.
So green beret, special force?
So I was an professional infantry soldier many years ago to begin with. And then my final posting was as a member of the 1 Commando Regiment, which is the Army Reserve's Special Forces unit. But it's unlike any other Army Reserve unit in that its tempo is extremely high and the skill level and the experience level is certainly well beyond, probably even in some cases, even beyond a lot of infantry units. So, that's something that some people find cool.
That's very cool, particularly for myself. So I'm an ex-soldier, ex-beret wearer myself as a cavalryman. The commando unit, were they based up on North Shore in Manly? Is that right?
That's correct, yeah, at Middlehead in Georges Heights.
Yeah, never got there myself. Looked like it was a pretty cool unit. Well done.
Thank you.
James, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you're doing today and Justified Talent? And the concept here is, we're going to ask you some questions around recruitment from a sales perspective. So why should we listen to you? Give us a little bit of a background there about what you yourself and Justified are up to.
Okay, cool. So look, as a quick backdrop, even before Justified, I co-owned a sales training business for about 15 years. So Glenn and I were actually chatting the other day, and we think that we probably stood in front of and lectured and bullied and cajoled and poked in the chest somewhere in the order of 32,000 salespeople over those years. So I got to kind of see good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. Fast forward to more recent time, in January 2018, I kicked off Justified Talent. And Justified Talent specializes in helping small business owners to recruit their very first sales professional. Often it's not actually their first hire. They've probably hired one or two and they've DIY'd it. They've got it wrong. It hasn't worked out. And so they've come to the realization that they actually need some assistance in getting their next salesperson, somebody who will actually stay with them and somebody who actually will work out. Yeah, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2+ years, enjoying it thoroughly and doing it slightly differently to how traditional recruiters have done it as well, because the other piece that comes to bear with me is that I've got a background in behavioral psychology. So I'm much more interested in the hardwired makeup of the individual rather than the tool bag they purport to carry around with them.
Okay, and a question on notice, without notice. So I know that you have surveyed a whole bunch of salespeople around their behaviours recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So in the last 2 years, I've had 1,400 people apply for roles that we've been assigned. And one of the rules that we have in our business, and I borrowed this from my old man, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be familiar with this phrase. The old boy says to me, when it comes to doing handiwork around the house, you need to measure twice and cut once. And so I borrowed from the old boy's kind of adage, and our kind of mentality in the business is we need to measure 4 times and then place once. And so for us, what happens is our candidates are put through 4 different types of assessment, and to help us, make sure they actually do have inside them what it takes to be a high-performing salesperson. The very last assessment that we put them through, which is one of the most reliable psychometric assessments on the planet at the moment, has subsequently yielded some really, really interesting data and information for us. And it's ended up creating a bit of a benchmark. So we now have very, very clear, crystal clarity about what the behavioral architecture is, if you like, of those people, what their natural hardwired attributes are of those people who go on to be successful, particularly in B2B selling, and particularly if they're using solution or challenger selling as a style, as a methodology. One of the pieces, and I won't go into the whole thing because it's very, very deep and it measures a whole bunch of things, but one thing that I'll kind of just point out that probably would take most people by surprise, and that is that the people who are the most successful in B2B selling are in fact not optimistic. And if you think about most job ads that most business owners or HR people will put up when they're looking for a salesperson, it's always, they're looking for can-do, positive attitude, optimistic. Well, guess what? That person's going to fail.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't have a lot of experience in the recruitment space, to be frank.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it sounds like you've really done your homework there. So
thanks. I think we have
to break that down. Yeah, well done. Okay, so it sounds like you're the right person to talk to for today's topic. And today's topic, of course, is what should you do if you find yourself stood down, sacked, or laid off in relation to social media, so your social profile, etc. And I guess the overarching concept here is how do I use social in this situation as effectively as possible?
Yeah.
Of course, this is driven immediately. The reason why we're having this conversation now is because of the COVID-19 situation. And lots of people are finding themselves either underemployed or unemployed. But I'm guessing much of this would apply at almost any time when we're looking for a new role. Would that be fair to say? Or is there a significant difference between now and business as usual?
No, I don't think it's any different in reality, other than the fact that every one of us needs to realise is that if we're in the job market, we're obviously now in a situation where it's incredibly more competitive. It has now skewed towards the employer and not the employee. And so, it's 2 things. You've got to be better at it and you need to be doing more of it. It's your new job. If you're out of a job at the moment and, you're a sales professional, your new job is selling yourself.
Yep. Okay, I love that. So I've got a couple of questions here, and I love starting all of my conversations with, what should we be not doing? So I'm out of a job, thinking about my social profile and my social activity. What are some of the things we should not be doing right now?
Okay. So from a social perspective, and different people will argue with me about this, but from a social perspective, I'm going to suggest that what you don't want to be doing is in that headline underneath your name, declaring you're open for opportunities or seeking your next opportunity or anything of that kind. And that's not because it's going to turn anybody off, but it's because it's a waste of the very limited characters that you've got in there, right?
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. So can we just explore that a little bit deeply? So how do you then get people to know that you're looking for a job?
Well, there is actually a facility for you to do that. And so when you go into, on the desktop, if you go up to the little icon that's got your face in the circle and you hit the drop down, you can actually go to a section in there which...
Oh, which says open to and that sort of thing. So it's, okay.
Right.
So we generally see consultants putting up there, I'm open to more business, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So you can declare to recruiters and hiring managers that you're open to new opportunities, right? But up in the headline, which is, in the main piece underneath the big version, big picture of yourself, what you're far better off doing is putting a description which is far more compelling, right? Don't waste that space.
Okay. So when you say compelling, obviously it's going to change for each salesperson and depending on the industry that you're in. Can you give us an example that might help?
Yeah, sure. So again, let me tell you what not to do. Don't put in there your last job title, right? BDM Northern Region, Account Executive Midwest. Who cares? I don't really care what your job title is or was. That's not the slightest bit compelling, right? So instead, what you're better off doing is putting a statement in there that describes what you do as opposed to what you are, right? So as an example, underneath, my name, we catalyze genuine sales high performance, right? So that's what we do. What's my title? My title is founder and CEO. Who gives a toss about that? Nobody, right? But by having that statement, that kind of describes, if you like, what your superpower is, what your expertise is, what your speciality is, the problems you solve or the opportunities that you create for potential employers, something of that ilk, that's going to be far more powerful than having, account executive.
Well, I mean, just for the record, I would suggest that you shouldn't have that anyway in your headline. Mm-hmm. So, I think you should be having in your headline how you help your customers. If you're geographically bound, you should definitely say, I'm helping Sydney sellers, or I'm helping sales directors in Sydney, I'm helping SaaS sales directors, whatever I think you need to call out who you're servicing as a salesperson. So this is not specific to looking for a new job. That's just an everyday profile setting, I suppose. Anything else that we shouldn't be doing?
Probably what you shouldn't be doing, and this might sound stupid as a response, but the key thing you shouldn't be doing is sitting back and waiting for people to discover you. Right? It's about getting active. So, that's probably not exactly what you're asking, but don't be sitting back now of all times, because your competitors are not. They're being proactive, they're reaching out, they're introducing themselves to people.
Okay. So that then leads us into, obviously, what should we be doing?
I think one of the things that's important to be doing is to get an understanding of, in the ideal world, where do you want to be working? And I don't mean a specific organization necessarily, but certainly, get clarity around, are you comfortable working in the small to medium space? Do you want to work in enterprise? Would you prefer to work at the corporate end of the spectrum? So that's part A. Part B is then, in what verticals? Who do you resonate with most? Who've you got the greatest affinity for, and perhaps even knowledge of, where your knowledge and your expertise is going to be unquestionable, right? So I had somebody reach out to me yesterday and he said, how's this for a headline? And his headline is, at the time, was Dynamic and Experienced International Business Development Director with a passion for building global companies. Yeah, okay, well, that's too vague, right? A recruiter's going to look at that and say, yep, nice marketing line, absolutely useless to me. I've got no idea what you do, who you do it for, or anything of that nature. So, one of the things that we need to be doing at this particular point in time, I'd suggest, is taking some time to actually, go internal and to kind of do a little bit of navel gazing and think about, where am I most resonant? Where am I deeply passionate about? If there is a series of businesses out there that do a particular thing and offer a particular solution to a particular market, does that grab me? And I know that will be difficult for some people, because some people kind of say, oh, look, I can do anything for anybody. Yeah, don't. Right?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is you need to do a little bit of a strategy on yourself, don't you?
Absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. And right now I know a lot of people will be champing at the bit. There's a nervousness. I've got to get a job. And, somebody said to me many, many, many years ago, the money's made in the planning, right? And that was business advice to me. But it's the same deal here, folks. The money, the job, the gig, the salary that you're chasing is going to be made in the planning. So it's about sitting back and really diagnosing, where do I best genuinely suit? And in particular, don't ask a recruiter or a hiring manager to guess where you might work well. Nobody's ever going to do that for you.
It's funny how many of these things align. And what I mean by that is, I spend a lot of time telling people, don't be a desperate seller. Don't sell desperately. Yep. Make sure you understand what your target market is. Go and speak to those people. Take really good value and great insights so that you can be a trusted advisor, so that you don't end up being thrown into the garbage heap as a commodity and end up trying to sell on price because you're trying to sell to everybody. And it seems like you're saying the exact same thing. Don't be desperate. Understand exactly where you need to be. But of course, the challenge with being unemployed and the challenge with being off quota is that you become desperate. It's really hard not to take any job because it's got a paycheck attached to it. And it's really hard not to take, the purchase order from somebody who you're not a great fit with because it's a purchase order and you've got to make quota. So they're so similar. It's amazing.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And so, the advice for both of those camps is stop thinking like a seller, start thinking like a buyer, right? And does anybody ever really want to buy from somebody who's got a vague and general and enthusiastic understanding of what they're selling? No. They want to buy from somebody who they know, like, trust, respect, and that is born of a depth of understanding and the ability to offer insights and to challenge people's thinking and to, create a situation where the customer/hiring manager says, oh, wow, I never thought of that. That's really good. And that gets you on their radar.
So how do we demonstrate that? So I want this to be tactical, right? So Mark's out of a job. I want to listen to this podcast. How do I prove that to people that I don't know yet, or maybe I do know who they are? What are some things that I could be doing?
All right. So, obviously the start point, and let's go to whether you do or you don't know them, right? So it's via social, it's about making the connections in exactly the same way that we do through social selling. It's about reaching out. It's about doing your research. Who's who in the zoo? Who's going to be involved in the decision-making process to some degree, or who's likely to influence that? And it's about reaching out to those individuals, but not reaching out with a, hey, are you hiring? Nobody wants to get that. And as sorry as everybody will feel for the person that sends that message, it's not going to land you the job, right? It's about understanding where is that business at this particular point in time? What does their market look like at this particular point in time? What are some things that I understand about both that organization and its general solution? You may not know the solution in detail, but you'll know it generally speaking if you're in that space. And then what do I know of their customers? And reach out and offer an insight. Give some kind of glimpse as to the things that you know and have done that could be of interest to them as an employer because it's going to help them solve something with their customers.
So if I'm a BDM, right, and I'm in the tech space, just to make it easy, do I reach out to the sales manager or the head of HR, or where am I sending this information?
See, all of the above. It's no different to...
socially surrounding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Multiple points of contact. Understand that the decision-making process is never a party of one. It's going to be a committee of good taste. And you need to understand, the motivations and the agendas of everybody in that. And so again, just like, a reasonably high-value sale, please also understand that one message isn't going to cut it. It's going to be multiple points of contact, potentially through a bunch of different mediums. It's about getting your visibility up onto their radar. Not to the point that you become pestering, of course, but, what you don't want to be is a one-hit wonder who just gets dismissed.
So, and I'm guessing that all this is going to be a lot easier if you were already writing content, blog posts, like anything at all, so that you had some history.
Correct.
To leverage on. So when Miss James Michael, the guru sales recruiter, falls across my profile, and you can see that I've written 10 articles across the last, 2 years, then I get what Mark's positioning himself well, as opposed to here's 2 hastily written articles in the last month or last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that is exactly where I go, right? When somebody applies for a role with us, we're a little bit strange. We don't ask for resumes and we don't ask for cover letters. We don't believe in the value of them. What we do ask, though, for is for them to give us their LinkedIn URL. And, and so we do click on that straight away and we take a bo peep. I'm interested in that headline. And the headline, I'm looking at it for 2 reasons. Number one, is it a compelling headline in its own right? And then secondly, that also tells me whether they're social savvy or not. And if you're not social savvy in the year 2020, you're on the way out, right? So the headline, serves as a double purpose. I will then scroll down and I will have a look at, what content have you put up, if any? Very few salespeople have. So let's have a look at what you've interacted with, other people's posts. Have you got opinions? Have you got views? Do you position yourself as somebody who's got some level of insight and knowledge? Those sorts of things.
And so what would you give? So you look at a few people's profiles. What would you give the average seller's profile out of 10?
The average seller?
Yeah. The guys and girls that you're talking to.
Well, 5. Unfortunately, what's still the case, and you know this, Mark, the vast majority of people out there, whether they're in sales or any role, still seem to believe that LinkedIn, the platform, serves one of 2 purposes. It's either for the purposes of kind of networking. And when I say networking, it's, I go to a physical networking meeting, I collect somebody's business card, I connect with them on LinkedIn, we're now networking, which obviously is crap, they're not.
Yeah.
So they think it's that, or they think it's just the electronic version of their resume, right? And so that's what I'm seeing more often than not.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's just a glossy version of the resume in the same way that many websites are just an electronic version of the brochure.
Yeah, listeners, you'll hear this stat from me or these stats from me many times, but 62% of people that are B2B buyers are researching your personal profile online as part of the buying process, and there's lots and lots of research to indicate that's true. 75% of people use social media to help them buy products and services, full stop. How many more? So if we're already at those high levels, if you're applying for a job, what's the chance of your recruiter or the person that you're going to the job with going to have a look at your social media profiles? Must be 90+%. Yeah. I don't have any data. I mean, if you find yourself out of a job and you're not doing the right thing on social, I just think you're really making it hard for yourself.
Yeah, you absolutely are. The analogy that I use about our LinkedIn profile, and I think most Australians will get this regardless of whether they live in Sydney or not. Your LinkedIn profile, folks, is the equivalent of that great big Coca-Cola sign at the top of William Street, right?
Yep.
That marks the gateway to the cross. Coca-Cola have had that sign there since the 1950s. It's had, to the best of my knowledge, 4 different iterations. It used to be clapperboard, then it went neon, then it went LCD, and now it's LED. And Coke pay the city of Sydney a 6-figure sum for the privilege of having that sign there. Why? Because of all of the eyeballs that go past it every single day, probably a little less at the moment, but every single day as people, enter the city or go back to the eastern suburbs, and then add to that all of the tourists that are in the cross. Your LinkedIn profile is kind of like that Coca-Cola sign. And as people come to it, what are they seeing? Are they seeing a tired, dusty 1957 version with the paint peeling off? Or are they seeing the bright, dynamic LED version that compels them to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and to dig deeper? And are they finding gems? Are they finding insights? Are they seeing somebody who clearly could be the next most amazing representative of their product, service, or brand?
Yeah, and I think there's so many people that have got it right that if you don't have it right, you're actually standing out for the wrong reasons. Yeah. So, if there's 10 candidates, my gut feeling would be there's 3 or 4 of them have got a pretty good social professional profile. And I guess you're probably going to move towards them first rather than the laggards.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think people listening to the Boss podcast are probably pretty switched on. What else should they be doing?
All right. So this one's another one that's kind of contentious because a lot of people kind of turn their noses up at it. But I do go take a look at the skills and endorsements section, right? And I also take a look at the recommendations section. And I probably place more emphasis on the recommendations than the skills endorsements, but I do kind of go by them. And if I see somebody who's fantastically, got 500 plus connections, but I see that their top skill, A, isn't business development or sales or, any of those sales. If that's not your top skill in endorsement, there's a, cause for concern. Or let's say it is business development. You've got 500 plus connections, but only 12 people have endorsed you for your top skill. Again, that's ringing alarm bells for me. It's kind of saying it probably doesn't mean that you can't sell, but it probably does mean that you're not particularly good at social selling. And again, it's the year 2020, folks. You can't not be good at social selling. You're already signing your death warrant. And then go down to, the recommendations piece. And yes, in Australia, we're a little bit awkward or a little bit kind of uncomfortable about asking people to toot their horn for us or toot our horn for us. Get over that. Right now, go back to all of the people who, whose opinions you value and who are going to bring some degree of credibility to your profile, and ask them if they'd be comfortable to write a recommendation for you. Seriously, it's even better than a reference check.
Yep. Right. 100% agree. And I think the easy way to do that is write a recommendation.
Yep.
So if you've got 15 people who you really enjoyed working with, write them a recommendation. And what I've found is you get about 2 to 1 back at least.
Yep.
And if you have a look at my profile, I think I've written about 50 recommendations, all genuine, and I've probably got about 30 back. Most people have responded with a recommendation, and I didn't ask. Yep. I've just written them a recommendation. Hey, loved working with you. It was great fun. Thanks very much. And then inevitably they go, you know what? I feel like I should do the same for you. We had a good time. Yep. How's this sound? So it doesn't need to be super awkward, I don't believe.
No, it doesn't. I mean, look, you know how in sales we'll get taught that we should ask for the referral, right? And of course, the vast majority of us don't. It's the same deal here. Just ask for the damn thing. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Somebody's going to say, oh, look, it's been a while. I don't think it's appropriate, which is code for, no, I actually didn't think much of you. But ask for the damn thing. I'm looking at one right now where the guy, skills and endorsements, strategy, 99 plus, business development, 99 plus, business strategy, 99 plus. I scroll down to his recommendations. Are you ready? He has 173 recommendations written for him.
Lovely.
Right? Do you reckon he's asked for those? Of course he has.
Yeah.
No shame in that.
No, I think that's a great strategy. Is there anything else you think you'd like to share that would be really helpful for people that are socially minded?
Look, I'll go on a slight kind of tangent here, and I'm not sure if we were going to go here or not. I can't remember. But the truth of the matter is, folks, right now, more so than ever, 80% of the jobs that get filled in the next 6 to 12 months will never, ever be advertised. And they certainly will not be given to a tosser recruiter like me.
So where are they?
So they're in this magical place called the hidden market. And the hidden market kind of goes like this. Hey, I was at a barbecue the other day, met this young sales guy. I reckon it'd be fantastic for that role that came vacant last Friday, right? It's somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, right? And so what you want to be doing over the next few months in particular, and again, let me go back to one of the points that I made earlier. Your new job is to market and sell yourself, right? If you were putting a 40-hour week in your last job a few weeks ago, your new job, albeit unpaid, sorry, you're an intern now, is for you to spend 40 hours marketing and selling yourself. And I'm saying it, marketing and selling deliberately in that order, right? And so what you're going to need to be doing, and so this is a slightly different tangent. So it's not about reaching out to people and saying, have you got a job? It's about reaching out to people in those organizations that you're perhaps interested in being able to work with, sharing that initial insight and, those sorts of things, but then asking whether they'd be open to having a conversation with you because you're wanting to explore potentially getting into their industry, not their game, not their company, right? So don't be as overt as that, but it's about, I'd love to have a chat with you because I'd love to have an understanding of what's going on in your space at the moment. Would you be open to doing that? Now, at the moment, that's probably going to be virtually.
Yep. So I love that. So would you be open is a really great way to phrase that. That'll work really well. And the fact that you're asking for advice rather than,
yes,
if you're appealing to somebody to help you, that's going to be significantly more likely to get a yes and less chance of getting a no.
Absolutely.
That's great. So it's been a long time since I've had to look for a job. So excuse me if I'm asking something stupid, but what about recruiters like yourself? Should I be reaching out to you and say, hey, James, can we have a chat? Or, how does that work?
Yeah, certainly reach out to me. And we have got a mechanism where, and I don't want to do this as a self-promotion thing, but I'll come back to the other side.
No, I meant recruiters more generally.
Yeah,
but, use yourself as an example.
Yeah. So, we've gone and deliberately built some stuff on our portal, which allows somebody to come in and to begin to build their profile and to begin to work their way through some of those assessments that I mentioned, albeit that you're not actually applying for a role right now. But what it allows us to do is to be crystal bloody clear about who you are, what you're about, and what your strengths and marketable skills are, right? And and we can do things like we'll help you fine tune your LinkedIn profile. We'll even help you build a little video, and I'll come back to the video piece, to kind of introduce yourself. So yes, by all means, reach out to us because we've built the facility for you to do that. And by all means, reach out to other recruiters. But my cautionary note to you is probably twofold at the moment, right? There are a lot of recruiters who are looking for jobs right now.
Right.
They themselves suddenly found themselves unemployed. And, the other piece is don't for one moment think that you can rely on any recruiter to find your next gig, for two reasons. Number one, only 20% of the available market will actually go to a recruitment firm anyway, because the other 80% will be filled through somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. But the second piece as well is that for most recruitment firms, the tension on them was already bloody high. I mean, just being a recruiter, you pretty much work with a gun at the side of your head the entire time, right? You can miss target once, you can miss target twice. You will not miss target a third time in the recruitment industry, right? So they've got a gun at the side of their head pretty much the entire time. And if you present yourself as a candidate and you want a recruiter to market you into something where it's not bleedingly obvious that you're a fit, it won't happen. They won't do it. They haven't got the time to or the energy to convince a client of the transferability of your skills.
So really the visibility component about me being seen by people inside my industry and people that I want to work with rests on me.
Yep, 100%. In the same way as, you were sitting at your desk 4 weeks ago knowing that the phone was going to ring and somebody saying, hey, can I buy from you? Bullshit.
Yeah, doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
Okay, so getting into specifics, James, so there's a lot of people unemployed, underemployed at the moment. There'll be a lot of people jostling for those few positions available. What do you think that's going to mean for salespeople as they try to find a new place?
I think that, there's been a lot of talk over probably the last 10 years and increasingly over the last 5 years about the gig economy. I think more and more salespeople are probably going to need to come to terms with the fact that they too may find themselves in the gig economy, or the other piece of terminology that comes with that is the portfolio careering. It may well be that you find yourself working for 2 different businesses over the course of 5 days in the week.
Right.
It may well be that you find yourself working for a particular business for a period of 7 months as they kind of get a campaign rolling and they call on your expertise and your grunt. And then, when they hit a certain point of momentum, maybe they'll bring you on or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll pivot to some other way of selling, right? So I think that more and more salespeople are going to have to come to terms with being a lot more adaptable and flexible in the marketplace today.
Yep.
I think the interesting question that a lot of people are asking me at the moment is what impact is this going to have on salaries and remuneration in general? I think in the very, very immediate short term, there's a bunch of business owners out there, and bear in mind, my market is the small to medium size space. So this will be a little less the case at the bigger end of town. But there's a lot of people out there, business owners now, who are hoping to be somewhat opportunistic, right? And thinking that they can probably get somebody at a bargain rate. I don't think that will last all that long in all reality. Like I literally think 2 to 3 months from now, as the economy does begin to turn, even if it's only marginally, small business owners in particular are going to understand that they've got lost ground to make up for. They're going to need to be selling like crazy to recover from the losses that were made in the intervening months. And they're going to recognize that they're going to have to pay for that.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, I don't actually see downward pressure on remuneration at all. I've had a few people say, do you reckon we could do commission only now?
Right.
And that boils my blood when I hear that.
That's the wrong way to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, look, one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of people about over the last 2 years and was highlighted by some reports done by people like Miller Hyman and that sort of thing is the sales talent gap. So the fact that particularly in some of the tech roles or the tech industry, getting salespeople to fill those roles has been very difficult. Do you think that's going to change?
No, I don't think it is going to change. I think the gap is going to get even worse. If I kind of throw another stat in, Salesforce shared at the beginning of this year, that in North America through 2019, 56% of salespeople in the tech space missed target.
Yep.
Right. So not only is it difficult to find talent, it's actually difficult to find talented talent.
Yep.
Right. And technology is not going away. Right. What the last few months or last few weeks have absolutely shown us is technology is about to go on a massive, great big march.
Yep.
It's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow, and the demand for it is going to grow and grow and grow and grow. We were already on the precipice of, I think, a great technological leap anyway. And so as we become an increasingly more technologically dependent world, the demand for sales capacity around that just gets greater and greater and greater. And as it does that, unfortunately, what it's also going to show up is the lack of talented talent, if that makes any sense.
I absolutely get it. Completely get it. So, and I like, you started that out by saying the last few weeks. I think the last few weeks have felt like the last few months, haven't they?
Haven't they just? Absolutely right.
Mate, I'm keen to wind this up. I think there's been some really good takeaways here, and hopefully we're going to help a lot of people. Is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you need to tell people that are in this position?
Look, let me wrap it up with a little formula. And it's, again, the parallels between sales in general and you finding your next gig are uncanny, right? And so there's a little formula that I got taught about 400 years ago when I first got into sales and which I continue to teach anybody that works in my business. And the formula is quite simply QDQ. And the QDQ is quantity. How many outreaches do you need to make? How many contacts, how many connections are you going to need to make in order to make the impact? All right, the D is direction. So that's with who? Are you reaching out to the right people? And yeah, by all means, reach out to HR. But, at the end of the day, the person who you're going to have the greatest impact on is unlikely to be the HR person, right? And I don't say that as a derogatory thing against HR, but, the sales director or the national sales manager or the state sales manager will much more quickly tune in to who you are and what you've got than the HR person will. And then again, also understand that if you can hit 3 or 4 different points of contact in that one organization and impress them with your prowess, all of a sudden, a conversation occurs. I was talking to this guy, Mark, Mark, you mean Mark McInnes? Yeah. I was talking to Mark McInnes as well. You want that happening.
Yep.
Right. So quantity, direction, who am I speaking with? And then quality, right? What's the quality of the communication that you're sending down the pipe? Is it, hey, I'm looking for a job. Have you got anything? Poor quality. Or, hey, been looking at what you're doing, think it's amazing. Here are some things that, I think you might find interesting to read or to contemplate or, providing insights.
Yep.
The QDQ is absolutely instrumental right now. Quantity, direction, quality.
Absolutely love it. That's fantastic. And the parallels between just being a good salesperson and what you need to do to get a new job are almost exactly the same.
Yep.
I hadn't thought about it that way. So that's a big wake up for me. It might have been obvious for everybody else. But at least you wouldn't need to spend a lot of time working on your product knowledge, would you?
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, James, I just want to wrap it up. How can listeners get in contact with you? But bearing in mind we're on the Best of Social Selling podcast, what's the best way?
So if you go to justifiedtalent.com/opportunities.
Okay.
Right. So that's number 1. Or number 2, just look me up, James Michael, on LinkedIn. Reach out and connect with me. I've been kind of declaring loud and clear to absolutely anybody who finds themselves in a situation where they're unemployed and they want help, I am here to help. We will help you, in whatever way we can. We've got a methodology for that, so it's not a hollow offer. We've got a process that we will put you through that will put you in a better position than you are in right now. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, James Michael.
Fantastic. Personalised connection request, I think, would always be the best way to go. That's just me personally.
Please. Yes, please.
And if you did want to reach out and say hi to me, feel free to do so if you're in sales. Just make sure you say in your connection request that you heard us on the pod. That'll make it a little bit special. Please subscribe to this pod, listeners, if you're not already, particularly if you found this was valuable to you. Please give us a little star rating and a review, if you wouldn't mind, to help others just like you find us more easily. So, James, just lastly, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
And listeners, we'll catch you all next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Ciao.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Also, don't forget, you can help many other sales and marketing professionals simply by providing a rating for this show on iTunes or wherever you find your podcast. It really makes a big difference. Thanks for listening to the Boss Podcast. Join us next time for even more tactics, discussion, and ideas to help you improve your social outreach.